can sport bring hope as a unifying factor? I've seen the videos. I've been in the fan parks. I have experienced just that about South Africans over the last while, that if you're wearing green and gold colors, that we all of a sudden just friendlier with each other. That doesn't exclude the very, very serious problems that we face as a country. But let's talk about this unifying factor of what happens when a South African sporting, and particularly when the Springboks are successful. Dr Saahier Parker, Senior Research Manager at the Impact Center, the Human Sciences Research Council. Yes, sport is not a panacea for South Africa's very, very deep problems, but for a very, very short while, we're best in the world at something. Not best at corruption, not best at children or grade 4s who can't read for comprehension. We're best at something that is positive, and that must have an effect on South Africans as they go about their lives, Saahier.
Good morning, Lester. Thank you for having me on your program again. Yes, indeed. I think the rare moments of brilliance that we see often in our sports teams needs to be effectively used and capitalized upon in the interim periods between big events like World Cups, between these massive events that act as these huge unifiers in the face of significant problems, not only at home, but also internationally, as we've seen the onslaught that's been happening in Gaza. And all the other problems in Ukraine. But beyond that, issues like load shedding, issues of crime, issues of corruption that you just mentioned, these tend to be separators of people rather than unifiers of people. And when we go through a weekend that we've just done all in South Africa, wearing the same T-shirt from Friday to Monday morning, we find that little act of wearing the green and gold, of seeing our rugby team not only perform, but excel and come home with the World Cup, is something that gives South Africans a moment of glimmer of brilliance to look forward to in times that are often very, very difficult to navigate.
I mentioned a research report compiled by the Human Sciences Research Council, asking South Africans about their relationship to sport and a winning nation when it comes to the Springboks, who they see as role models, who are their favorite players. And there's quite a very strong response to particularly Springbok rugby. But I find interesting a data point in your paper that says, despite the positive sentiments related to South Africa's performance in this Rugby World Cup, about 39% of respondents, only 39% of respondents regularly watch rugby matches. What does that tell us? That even people who are non-traditional rugby watchers attend games, go to stadiums, even watch on TV. There's something about a winning Springbok team that simply brings everyone together, whether they're a rugby watcher or not.
Indeed, Lester. I think the result you speak of was from the earlier 2019 rugby victory that we at the HSRC had conducted with our partners at the Moyo app, which allows us to do these online data-free surveys. In the most recent survey that we initiated on Saturday following the Rugby World Cup victory, we indicated that 52% of respondents regularly watch and support the South African rugby team. But the vast majority of people that responded to our survey either never watched rugby or only watched the final. So there's really that issue of how we use that momentum, how we use that social goodwill, and the symbolism of not only the Springbok rugby team that has been victorious this weekend, but we see our boys in green in the Cricket World Cup as well, marching through some of the early games and really trying to build a sense of victory in terms of some of the sports teams that are around at the moment. And especially when we look at the symbolism and the historic importance of teams like the Springboks, where in the bad old days, as we used to say, the Springbok represented something completely opposite to what it is this morning for you and I and the 62 million other people in South Africa, Lester. But the way in which the symbolism of Bokkie in itself, of the Springbok team, has transformed this country is really a story that we saw beginning in 1995 and through, happy to say, the 4 World Cup victories that we've achieved thus far. I think that symbol becomes an important springboard that we can use to drive and address issues of social cohesion, to drive and address issues, ongoing serious issues of xenophobia and racism that still exist in this country. The issues of inequality and unemployment hark back to, I think, the earlier days of this country, pre-1994, but those legacy impacts are very real. And while, like the Romans, when we leave the Colosseum, we revel at the thought of our teams winning, we revel at the thought of our country being on top, and for once not for some negative issues. But I do think that the victory that the Springboks have should be capitalized once the red buses go through the major cities of South Africa and we all get a chance to see Sia and the boys hold up the cup. There is a significant opportunity for us to leverage the goodwill that we've built up over this last weekend, not only in terms of addressing employment inequality and issues of xenophobia or racism, but just in terms of unifying this country in what is going to be a significant and important 12 months ahead of us, not only politically but also socially, as we begin to close off 2023 and start off what's going to be certainly a very exciting 2024.
Dr Saahier Parker, Senior Research Manager at the Impact Center at the Human Science Research Council.